Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Samach Tet Amud Aleph of Bava Kamma. We are continuing on in a discussion. We quoted yesterday, let me share my screen. We quoted yesterday a viewpoint that we're now going to requote and then and get started. So the viewpoint that we quoted yesterday is from Rabbi Yochanan, and he said, well, you know what? Let's just jump right into it because we're going to restate his statement with the very beginning. We're at the two dots, fourth line on Samach Tet Amud Aleph, and we're going to quote Rabbi Yochanan, the position of Rabbi Yochanan. Gufa, let's take a look at this, at what was said. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Gazal velo nisyashu habalim. If something is stolen and the owners have not given up hope of recovering it, so as a result, there's no issue about the thief now becoming the full-fledged owner of the item. Shneim einan yecholon lahakdish. The two of them lack the ability to consecrate the item. Zelafi, meaning that the owner has no ability to consecrate the item, and the thief has no ability to consecrate the item. Now, on one hand, the thief is pretty obvious because it doesn't belong to him, and you can't consecrate things that don't belong to you. But so the real chiddush seems to be that even the person who owns it is not able to consecrate it, and we're going to challenge that thought over the course of today. And so why can't they quote, why can neither of them consecrate the item, give it to Hektish? Because the thief can't do it because it doesn't belong to him. And the other one can't do it because he doesn't have control of the item. The item is in the control of the thief, right? It's been stolen out of his possession. So now we're going to challenge Umi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. Now, did Rabbi Yochanan actually make this statement? Because we are going to point indirectly to not a statement of Rabbi Yochanan himself, but indirectly to a statement of Rabbi Yochanan himself that suggests that Rabbi Yochanan would not agree with this theory, that he would say that a person would have the ability to consecrate something or do other elements of ownership with something that even if it wasn't in the owner's possession, because of the following. Rabbi Yochanan Haki, did Rabbi Yochanan actually say this? Rabbi Yochanan, because we know that Rabbi Yochanan said the following. Halacha Kistam Mishnah, that when you have a Mishnah that has an anonymous position in the Mishnah, that anonymous position is the halacha. Utnan. And here, look at the following anonymous Mishnah that we have. Now, this anonymous Mishnah is a long Mishnah. Most of it is not relevant to us. But the very, very end of it, we will see the piece that is relevant. So we'll go through the whole thing, obviously, because we're going to, the whole point of Daf Yomi is to learn all of the Gemara. But let's take a look and we'll see there are some other interesting things that we'll see along the way. So Utanan, we learn in this Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Meiser Sheni, the first Mishnah of the fifth parak. Kerem Revai, if you have produce from the fourth year of a vineyard. Now, what's important to know about the fourth year is that, or let's just remind us of the laws of Orla and Revius, that the Orla is for 3 years exactly, and it's prohibited it to benefit from it during those first 3 years. But the fourth year, you're allowed to benefit, but it's like Meiser Sheni, you need to bring it up to Yerushalayim and eat it there. So Kerem Ravai Hayu Mitzainin Oto Bikzuzos Adama. They would highlight which vines are the fourth year with clumps of earth. Why? Simana. Now this is an aside that is not actually in the Mishnah. We're explaining it. Simana be ki adama. Because the idea is that the sign shows that these produce is like earth. Ma adama ika hanamina, just as we're allowed to benefit from the earth, avhai nami, so too this we're allowed to benefit. Kimi parka share isna hanue mina, right? When you redeem it, then you're going to be allowed to derive benefit. Vishel Orla, because again, although one way of being able to consume uh, net derivai, the fourth year of a fee of a vineyard, is by bringing it to Yerushalayim. Another way is by redeeming it, and then you use the money in Yerushalayim to buy food. So that is point number one. Vishel Orla. So what do you do when if you use clumps of dirt to highlight the fact that that produce of a particular area is from the fourth year of a vineyard? So then that's great. But what do you do when it's Orla, when it's the first 3 years? Becharsis, you use charsis. Rashi understands this is shards of clay. Okay, why? Because again, simana kacharsis, it's a sign like charsis. Ma charsis she'ein hanamina. Just as you don't get any benefit from pieces of clay because there's nothing to do about it because the clay is broken and it can't really be fixed. Avhai delays be hanamine. So too, these you're not allowed to derive benefit from. Vishal Kvaros. What do you do about a grave? I had to highlight that you're not allowed, that you have to be careful about tuma over the grave. Bisid, you'd mark it with lime. And again, simana dechivar ka'atzamot, right? The lime is white, just like bones. Mamcha b'shofech, and you would dissolve the lime and pour it out around the grave so that everything is white. So everything should be very white. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, "B'med dvar mamurim." When it came to the fourth year and orla fields, when were we talking about that you needed to worry about marking it? B'shvius, only in Shemitah, because when it's in Shemitah year, so then, right, the Hefker Ninhu, as the Gemara explains as we interrupt the Mishnah, because this produce would be Hefker, and that's why we need to be worried that somebody else is going to come into your field and take it. Aval bishar shnei shavua, but in the other years of the cycle, of the 7-year cycle, halitehu l'rasha v'yamos. Let's let the Russia take it and he'll die. Meaning, he's going to be wicked. He's going to take something that doesn't belong to him. Let him do another sin. So, you won't prevent him from, why bother preventing him from stealing something that, is that you're not allowed to benefit from? Let him steal it and he'll get the benefit from it and he'll get extra punished. That's nuin. But when it came to the people who were tsanua, the people who were very modest, they, meaning the people who were righteous, menichenes hamos, they would place down coins, the omrin, and they would say, kol hanilkat mizeh, anybody who takes from this field, mechulal al hamos halalu, whatever they pick is going to be, redeemed from and made deconsecrated from these coins. And that way, this would only work with respect to the fourth year produce. Whatever they take, it's not going to be considered as if it may be stolen, but at least it won't actually be net rivai. It won't actually be the fourth year vineyard fruits, and which would need to be brought to Yerushalayim. So this way, at least, they won't have an extra sin. So now let's back up and remind ourselves, why did we say all of this? Because Rabbi Yochanan says that the halacha is like an anonymous Mishnah. Now, there is an opinion in this Mishnah. Obviously, it's Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, but the other stuff was said by somebody who's anonymous. And so what we can say is that the halacha is like this anonymous Mishnah. And what did the anonymous Mishnah say at the very end? It said that you have the ability to redeem the neta rivai after it was taken out of your possession. Well, that suggests that you do have certain ownership rights, and that should include even potentially consecrating an item after it has left your possession. So we see an apparent inconsistency, because Rabbi Yochanan says in his statement that the owner of an item that has been stolen is unable to consecrate it, and yet the owner of vineyard fruit that's from the fourth year that has been stolen has the ability to deconsecrate it. You would think that these two things would be aligned. And we're not going to try to undermine it by saying that consecration is different than deconsecration. That is not the way we're going to go. So it seems like it's a good question on it. And if you want to say, you know what, that last statement, which is the one that caused us concern, because it said that the people who are modest are going to put down money and redeem the stolen items. Maybe that was said only by Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and he was just continuing his statement and saying that while I don't think you need to do it, people who are modest will put down the coins, and that's what they do. Well, that doesn't solve the problem either, because Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, Rabbi Yochanan, it was said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan by Rabbi Bar Bar Chana that Kol Makom Shishana Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel b'Mishnah Seinu Halacha Kamoso, that anywhere where Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says a halacha in a Mishnah, the halacha is like him. Chutz mi Areb v'Tzaidan Uraya Acharona, except for three specific cases that we won't go into. But the point is that there are three exceptions, but this isn't one of the exceptions. And so as a result, whether we say that the halacha is like a Stam Mishnah, or we say that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, we're going to be stuck. So as a result, we are going to, so we need to come up with an answer. So Amrei, so they gave the following answer: Lo tema kol hanilkat mizeh. Don't say that when the modest people said that we're going to that the coins that they put down will be redeemed for whatever was picked. Ella ema kol hamislakate mizeh. Say that it's referring to anything that will be picked. As Rashi says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines up in the narrow lines on Samach Tedem at Aleph. Hamislakate she'asidim lilkot. That is what will be cut. That is what that which will be cut. That is the one that is going to be redeemed. And so as a result, it is not, in fact, now the statement would be consistent. The statement of the Tzanuim would be consistent with Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan says that what's stolen cannot be redeemed. And here we would say, no, what is going to be stolen can be redeemed. When what's stolen can't be redeemed, but what is going to be stolen could be redeemed. Rabbi Yochanan hacha. But 1 second, could Rabbi Yochanan actually say that we should reread this Mishnah and say it's talking about some future theft? That doesn't work, because Rabbi Yochanan also said, "Va'amar Rabbi Yochanan, Tznuin v'Rabbi Dosa amru davar achad," that the Tzenuin, the modest ones, and Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Dosa said the same thing. Now, what was it that Rabbi Dosa said? Well, we're going to tell you. But Rabbi Dosa, Nilkat Kamar, he said, as we will see in a moment, that we were talking about things that were picked in the past. Now, Tanya, and let's go through the brisa that shows what Rabbi Dosa said. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shachris Balabayas Omid Omer, that in the morning, before I do this, let's note that this is going to be talking about the law of Leket. The law of Leket is that when you have produce and you drop it as you are collecting, if you drop 1 or 2 grains, you're not allowed to collect it back. You're not allowed to pick it back up. You actually have to leave it there. It's, I believe, the only mitzvah the only way you can do it is by making an accidental mistake. That you have to have accidentally left it behind. And so, and I guess shechaka as well. These 2 mitzvahs, they can only be done by through some sort of accident. But if you drop 3 grains, then you are allowed to go back and pick it back up, because 3 is essentially makes it a real amount, and we don't take that away from you. And so as a result, But not every poor person knows that halacha. Some poor people will assume that anytime any number of grains fall, they would be allowed to collect it. And so as a result, we are worried that people will pick up grains that actually don't belong to them. So what are you supposed to do about it? So that's what this brisa comes to tell us. Rabbi Yehuda says, Shachris, in the morning, Baal Abayas Omed Ba'omer, the Baal Abayas stands up and he says, Kol sheyilaktu aniyim hayom yehei hefker. Whatever the poor are going to collect, even if I'm really supposed to be entitled to it, I am going to let them keep it, and it's going to be as if I don't own it. And so therefore, they're not going to have been stolen. Rabbi Dosa says you don't have to do it in the morning. La tose erev. In fact, you should do it in the evening. Kol shaliktu aniyim yehei hefker. Anything that the poor people have already collected, that will be ownerless. So we see here that if Rabbi Yochanan says that the modest ones and Rabbi Dosa say the same thing, it makes sense to leave the modest ones as referring to past picking, to talk about what was picked from the vineyard, and that is going to be redeemed on the coins. Because Rabbi Dosa clearly says that you say it at the end of the day. So Ibuk de Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Dosa, Rabbi Dosa, Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, listen, no. We could just switch everything. We could switch Rabbi Yehuda's position and Rabbi Dosa's position. So we switched the Mishnah about the modest ones to say that we're talking about what will be picked, and so too we'll switch Rabbi Dosa to say about what will be picked. So amai apach misnisa. Why did you change? No, so why did you change our brisa? Why this brisa? Afchal Rabbi Yochanan. Why not just change Rabbi Yochanan's statement? Ve'ema tzenuyin ve'Rabbi Yehuda amru davar echad. Maybe what we should change, don't change a fundamental text, change the statement of an Amora. Rabbi Yochanan is an Amora, and so we could say that what Rabbi Yochanan actually said was that the people who were modest and the Rabbi Yehuda, they were saying the same thing, because Rabbi Yehuda in this brisa says that we're talking about things in the future. The guy stands up in the morning and he says whatever will be gathered will be ownerless. So why not just make that change? So Amrei lo sagya the lo mishapachta misnisa. The issue is it's not enough to change the if the brisa is not reversed. This is a double negative, meaning that the brisa needs to be reversed. Debaha masnisin katani de isle Rabbi Yehuda breira, because according to the literal wording of this brisa, it would seem that Rabbi Yehuda would say that he holds of the concept of breira. So this gives us another opportunity to talk about breira, which is wonderful. A breira is the concept that even though I don't know the specific item, I can create a world in which that specific item will eventually be known, and that will be okay. So, for example, I can, and we'll see a very similar example in the moment, but let's say I have a field, and I say, I want the whatever corner I leave over that isn't paya, whatever corner whatever I leave over last, or whatever I bring in and put onto my pile in my house when it becomes chayev in Trumas and Maasros, that will be the Trumas and Maasros for the field. So I don't know which one is going to be the right grain of the Trumas and Maasros, but I know that it will eventually. So now that I've said that, and now I have this pile of grain, and I know which was the last grain that was put onto the pile, can I say that because I know now what I was referring to back when, that we can pretend that I was always referring to this state, to these grains? Or do we say, aim braver? No, you need to know specifically to what you're referring to. Now, in this case, when the owner of the field gets up and he says that what will be taken from this field by a poor person will be hefker, the owner of the field doesn't know what which grains he's referring to. It could be any grains. And so you need, in order for him to be able to make the statement before he goes into the field, we need to hold a brera. But the problem is Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold a brera. The Bahamas in Katani de Isle Rabbi Yehuda brera. Again, this brisa seems to suggest that he holds a brera because he is saying that what will be taken will be hefker. But we don't know what grains will be taken. And how do we know the Shamina Leila Rabbi Yehuda ba'alma de brera? And we know that he holds elsewhere that he does not hold the concept of brera. Tanan. Now, this Tanan should actually probably be Tanya, according to the Masoras Hashas. So we'll change it to Tanya because it's not the literal wording of a brisa. So there is a Mishnah that's similar to it in Demai, but this is not the actual wording. So halokeach yayin mebena krusim. And Rashi tells us, if you buy wine from among the Kutim, top Rashi on Samach Tedam Bet, as we turn to Samach Tedam Bet, the Erev Shabbos, if you buy wine on Friday from Kutim, Kutim are assumed not to have taken Trumas and Maestros properly, Bein Hashmashos, and you bought it just before Shabbos came in. So as a result, you do not have the ability to take Trumas and Maestros. Tiditanya, the Tosefta, the Kadesh Alav Hayom. And it became, as we learned in the Tosefta, and the day became holy, meaning that it was Shabbos. It became Shabbos. Ve'ein lo malishtos, and you don't have Shabbos, and you don't have anything else that you could drink on Shabbos. You don't have any kind of wine for Kiddush, or even any other thing to drink. Ve'ein lo panai lahafresh, and he never had the opportunity to take the Trumas and Maestros. So what are you supposed to do? You're not allowed to take Trumas and Maestros on Shabbos because that's called fixing something, and you're not allowed to do it. So what should you do? Omer, you should say the following. Shnei lugin sha'ani atid lahafrish, the 2 100ths of lugin that I'm going to separate after Shabbos, haray hein truma. They will be the truma. Asara ma'aser rishon. And 10 are going to be ma'aser rishon. And tisha ma'aser sheni. And 9 are Meiser Sheni. This is all rounding because, of course, after you take off 2, you really owe only 9.8, but we'll round it up to 10. And now you take the 9.8, and so as a result, you or 10. So now you only have 88, but we'll therefore round it up to 9. And now you've separated everything that you need to separate. Now you actually haven't done the separation yet. You're just committing that what will be left over, what you will highlight and you separate will work. Umechel, and thereby, and then you go ahead and you deconsecrate the Meiser Sheni by putting it on some coins. And now all of a sudden, all of your grain is going to be fine. The Shosim Miyad, and now you can drink right away. So even though we don't know which part of the liquid will in fact be Trumas and Maestros, according to the official the Divrei Rebbe Meir, that's what Rebbe Meir says. Rebbe Meir says there is Breira, and you're able to do this all ahead of time, and therefore you'll be allowed to drink the wine on Shabbos. But Rebbe Yehuda, and of course that's the comment, that's the person that we care about in this context, because we're trying to cite the fact that Rebbe Yehuda does not say Breira. Rebbe Yehuda, Rebbe Yossi, Rebbe Shimon, Osrin, they say you're not allowed to do it, because presumably they all say that you cannot, we do not, in fact, have the concept of Breira. You can't post facto figure out what you're referring to. So Amre, so Amaika Abchatla Lamastisan. All right, so where are we at the moment? We are at the moment, right? So we had the original statement of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says you cannot, that if somebody steals something from you, you cannot make it hektish. Okay, but it seemed like he said when the modest one said you can, if somebody steals something from you, make it deconsecrate it. You could redeem it on coins. So those two statements seem to be inconsistent. So we said that when the modest one said it, they were actually talking about the future. Okay, and similarly, we switched the opinions of Rabbi Dosa and Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Dosa would also be talking about the future. And so now again, Rabbi Dosa and the modest ones are all talking about the future. And so we've made it, everything is consistent, but we have a different inconsistency now. Because what we have said is that Rabbi Yochanan would agree with the modest ones and Rabbi Dosa, and he would say that in both that we allow somebody to redeem something even though we don't know which item is going to be redeemed, meaning that Rabbi Yochanan would agree that you can say yesh breira, but that's going to be a problem because why did we reverse the opinions of the Brisa? Because we had an internal contradiction within Rabbi Yehuda, because in one place it seemed like Rabbi Yehuda said yesh breira, and one place he said ain breira, so we reversed the opinions. But hashtanami kasha to Rabbi Yochanan ad Rabbi Yochanan, but we're going to be still left with a question of Rabbi Yochanan on Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan also says ain breira. The Amrat Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan would say lo tema kol hanilka ella ema kol hamislaki, because you were saying that Rabbi Yochanan would say that we're not talking about what was picked in the past, but rather what will be picked. So Alma Isle Breira, that shows that Rabbi Yochanan would say yes, Breira. But Vaha Rabbi Yochanan, Leslie Breira. But we know that Rabbi Yochanan says ain Breira. There's no concept of Breira. To Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Asi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ha'achin Shechalku Lekuchos Hain. I'm sorry, excuse me. Ha'achin Shechalku. When you have brothers who divide up an inheritance, Lekochos Hain. It is considered as if each of the possessions that they take are purchased. And therefore you have to go back, you have to undo the entire division at Yovel. So let's go through what that means. The point is that you have somebody unfortunately passes away and they leave 3 sons. We'll assume that none of the sons are a first. So they're going to divide it equally. But we don't know who gets property A, who gets property B, who gets property C. So we could say yesh breira. We could say that in fact, when son 1 takes property A, when son 2 takes property B, when son 3 takes property C, we can say that that was what they really inherited from the start, and that it isn't an undermining of the trend. There is no transaction post their father's death. And so we would say yesh breira, and therefore they would be able to keep it forever. But what Rabbi Yochanan here is saying, no, we don't allow the sons to keep those fields forever. What actually happened here is that the 3 sons as a unit inherited field A, field B, and field C. And effectively, son 1 acquired field A by giving up his rights to field B and C. Son 2 acquired field B by giving up his rights to field A and C. And son 3 acquired field C by giving up his rights to field A and B. And so as a result, when you view it that way, we have this concept that every Yovel, all transactions are undone. And so as a result, this property needs to go back to its original state. And its original state is that it's a 3-way partnership among these 3 brothers. And so as a result, they will need to divide it again. And maybe one property went up in value, one property went down in value, etc. So they'll need to divide it again. Because again, it seems that Rabbi Yochanan says, ain breira, there is no post facto clarification. Ella la'olam kol hanilka. So as a result, we have to undo everything. And we're going to actually keep the original statement of the modest ones to be talking about the past, and we're going to keep Rabbi Dosa, as at least according to Rabbi Yochanan, as talking about the past. So yes, we might have to have a problem with Rabbi Yehuda, but right now we're focused on Rabbi Yochanan's viewpoint, and Rabbi Yochanan will continue to view that there's this that both Rabbi Dosa and the modest ones are talking about, the Tsunuan are talking about the past. And so as a result, we now have a real question. How is it that Rabbi Yochanan could say that that when something is stolen, you don't have the ability to be to contribute it to hektish, because after all, he says that you have the ability to redeem it in both of these, in both the statement of Rabbi Dosa and in the statement of the Tzenuin. So how do we deal with it? So the Rabbi Yochanan stama achrina ashkach. The issue is that there were two Stam Mishnahs that disagree with each other. And so as a result, although Rabbi Yochanan does say that he follows every Stam Mishnah, there can be situations where two Stam Mishnahs disagree with each other. And therefore, even though the Stam Mishnah that involves the Tzenuin, it would suggest that it would disagree with Rabbi Yochanan's statement, Rabbi Yochanan would say, I don't hold of that Stam Mishnah because there's another Stam Mishnah that I do hold like. And which Mishnah is that? Ditnan. It's our Mishnah. It's the Mishnah that we learned back on Samach Bet Amud Bet, where it says, Ditnan. Ein hagonev achar haganav mishalem tashlumi kefel, that the person who steals after a thief doesn't have to pay a double payment. Amai, why is it that they don't have to pay a double payment? Bishlo laganav harishon lo mishalem. It makes sense why you don't have to pay the first thief, because the guna mebesa ish v'lo mebesa ganav, because the Torah says that you stole from the person, not you stole from a thief. El labalim nishalim. But why not have him pay the original owner? Meaning, let the original owner get a double payment from the first thief and a double payment from the second thief. After all, they both stole his object. Rather, it's because it doesn't belong to the first thief, so that's why you don't pay the double payment to him. And you don't pay the original owner because it's not in his possession. So we see this concept of that when it's not in your possession, you lack rights of ownership. And so that is the basis for Rabbi Yochanan saying that when you have something that's been stolen from you, you don't have the right to be to donate it, to consecrate it any longer, to make it hektish. Umay chazes the azol basar ha'histama. Why are we now saying that Rabbi Yochanan should follow specifically the Mishnah, our Mishnah, where it says that we're not going that, and we don't allow the stolen item to be donated to hektish any longer by the original owner? Why not let him follow the Tzenuin, who allow redemption even after the item has been stolen, and so as a result would presumably also allow to somebody to be makdish the item even after it's been stolen? Because there's a pasuk, an explicit pasuk in the Torah that specifically suggests that this should be the halacha. Because what does it say? The ish ki yakdish es beso kodesh lashem. That if a person, this pasuk is in Vayikra, Parak Kaf Zayin, near the very end of Vayikra, Parak pasuk Yudalid, that if a person consecrates his house, so then it's going to be holy. What does that teach us? Ma beito birshuto, just as a person's house is in their possession, avkol birshuto, it's got to be something that's in your possession. And if it's not in your possession, if it's not under your domain, if you don't have direct control over the item, well, then you can't consecrate it. And because Rabbi Yochanan learns this lesson from this verse, and this verse supports our Mishnah, so Rabbi Yochanan is going to say that when it comes to an anonymous Mishnah, we're going to say that the halacha is like the Mishnah on Samach Bet Amud Bet, and it's not like the Tzenuin, the modest ones, who say that you can redeem it. Okay, so having done that, we are now going to highlight the fact that we did not, in fact, need to say that the modest ones, the Tzenuin and Rabbi Dosa, are saying the same thing. And Abaye, Rava, and Ravina are each going to teach us a lesson that of what we might have thought, but for the fact that Rabbi Yochanan taught that in fact this was that Rabbi Dosa and the modest ones say the same thing. So if we, without that, what might we have thought? And that is going to teach us a lesson. And with that, we'll be done for today. So Abaye. So what is it? Amar Abaye. Abaye says the following. Ilavda Amar Rabbi Yochanan Tznuin Rabbi Dosa Amruk Davar Echad. If not for the fact that Rabbi Yochanan said that the modest ones and Rabbi Dosa were saying actually the same things, Hava Amina, I might have thought Tznuin Islahu de Rabbi Dosa. That of course the Tznuin would agree with Rabbi Dosa, but Rabbi Dosa lace to Tznuin. But Rabbi Dosa might not have agreed with the Tznuin. Why? Why? So the Gemara is going to explain. Because Tsanuan Islahu the Rabbi Dosa, it makes sense that the modest ones would agree with Rabbi Dosa because Now again, let's remember what Rabbi Dosa and the Tsanuan both say. The Tsanuan say that when I have Netta Revi, the fourth year produce, I can that it's a good thing for me to put down some coins, and if somebody steals that fourth year produce, it's not talking about an accident. Somebody steals that fourth year produce, so I say that that's going to be redeemed. So fine, they stole my produce, but at least they didn't also violate neta revi of taking something from hektish. It's taking something that needs to be brought up to Yerushalayim to only be eaten there. So when it comes to a gana of durabano takanta, so now the modest ones say that we're worried about even thieves. Well, aniyim tzrikin lameimar. Of course they would be concerned, because remember what the Rabbi Dosa says. Rabbi Dosa says that we're talking about a situation where thieves who don't realize that, poor people who don't realize that they will actually be stealing when they pick up the leftover grains. If there are groups of 3 grains together, they won't know that they're stealing. And so as a result, of course, we're going to try and help them. If we're going to help a thief avoid the violation of fourth year produce, well, then of course we're going to help a poor person avoid the prohibition of stealing. But maybe we wouldn't say the other way. Rabbi Dosa lays to Tzenuin, but maybe Rabbi Dosa would not agree with the modest one, because aniyim hu da avdu lahu rabbana takanta. Because when it comes to protecting the poor people who might steal accidentally, there we want to protect them. Aval ganav lo avdu le rabbana takanta. Maybe they wouldn't make, the rabbis would not make that kind of takana, and so as a result, Rabbi Dosa might not have necessarily agreed with the Tzenuin. So as a result, that's why Rabbi Yochanan needed to tell us that the modest ones and Rabbi Dosa were in fact saying the same thing. So that's comment number 1. Comment number 2 comes from Rava. Amar Rava ilabda Rabbi Yochanan Tzenuin the Rabbi Dosa amruk davar echad. If not for the fact that Rabbi Yochanan had told us that the modest ones and the Rabbi Dosa were saying the same thing, hava amina, I might have thought, man tana Tzenuin. Who was it that was telling us that with respect to the modest ones that in fact that they that you should that it could be that you are able to redeem neta revi even after an item is bestolen? Rebbe Meir here. Maybe it's Rebbe Meir, because Lav Amar Rebbe Meir Meiser Mamun Gavoahu. Rebbe Meir is the one who says when it comes to fourth year produce that it is considered that he holds that Meiser Sheni, and by analogy fourth year produce as well, that Meiser Sheni actually belongs to God. It does not, in fact, belong to humans. So as a result, therefore, you can't use it to marry somebody. You can't. It's not your produce. But when it comes to redemption of Meiser Sheni and also fourth year produce, neta revi, so it's considered part of your possessions. Diksiv im ga'oyig al ish mimasro chamishiso Yosef alav, because the Torah tells us, this is a pasuk in Vayikra Parak Kav Zayin, also near the end of Vayikra. So we know that you need to redeem the Meiser for that if you redeem your own produce, you need to add a penalty effectively of a fifth, because we're concerned that you've underestimated the value of your produce. So Karye Rachmana Masro. So the Torah is calling it your Meiser, Umosif Chomish, and that's why you have to add a fifth. So Kerem Ravai Nami. And the same thing would be true for the fourth year vineyard produce. So Gamar, Kodesh Mi Meiser. And you would learn the word Kodesh by netta revai, to kerem revai, to the produce of Meiser Sheni. And so as a result, ksiv hachai kodesh hilulim, because in one place it says kodesh hilulim, ksiv gabi Meiser v'chol maaser haaretz mizera haaretz mipri ha'etz la'Hashem hu kodesh. So we see that kodesh is by both items. So ma kodesh ksiv gabi Meiser aval gav de mammon gavoahu le'inyan pedia ukme rachmana birishusei. Avhai kodesh nami diksiv gabi kerem revai afal gav de lav mamun didehu le'inyan achuli ukme rachmana birshusei. So the point is that the Torah has effectively established both kerem revai / netta revai in the possession of the person who is the owner of the property, even though it belongs to Hashem. And so as a result, maybe we could say right? Even though it doesn't actually belong to him because it belongs to Hashem. Daha. So now when it comes to this, ki ise birshuse nami lav tidehu. So even when it's in his property, it doesn't really belong to him. And yet we allow him to deconsecrate it. So maybe we can allow him to deconsecrate it even if it's stolen. And so as the result, when the modest one said that you can redeem netta revai, it's because it's a special, or kerem revai, it's a special rule of kerem revai. Kerem revai and Meiser Sheni and netta revai, they would all have this special rule that you would be allowed to redeem it even when it isn't even in your property. But maybe about gabi leket, when it comes to leket, there's no special rule. If it's not in your property, you can't redeem it. And so as a result, even though according to Abaye, remember Abaye said that the modest ones would certainly agree with Rebbe Dosa. Rava is pointing out that no, you don't even have to have the modest ones agree to Rebbe Dosa. Maybe even the modest ones would disagree with Rebbe Dosa because maybe the modest ones are only all based on Rebbe Meir. And Rebbe Meir would learn that the ability to redeem is a special pasuk in the Torah. And maybe that special pasuk in the Torah will allow us to redeem even if it isn't in your possession. After all, it doesn't belong to you in the first place. The Torah is just treating it as yours. And so as a result, maybe the modest ones would not even agree with Rebbe Dos. So as a result, about Gabi Leket, when it comes to Leket, Kaven de Mamona Dide, the only reason you're allowed to redeem it is because it's his actual property. Only when it's in your possession are you able to make it ownerless. Hefker. And when it's not in your possession, you can't make it hefker. So as a result, that is the second lesson that we can learn from Rabbi Yochanan teaching us that Rabbi Dosa and the modest ones say the same thing. That you don't say that the modest ones agree with Rabbi Meir, because really the modest ones are agreeing with Rabbi Dosa. So that's why it's important for Rabbi Yochanan to teach us that statement. So all of this that we just said would be what you might have thought, but as a result of Rabbi Yochanan saying that the modest ones and Rabbi Dosa saying the same thing, we're going to not say this. We're not going to say that the modest ones agree with Rabbi Meir, that Netta Revai and Kerem Revai and Meiser Sheni all actually belong to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But rather, we can say that, in fact, they agree with the other opinion that they all belong to the owner. So Amar Ravina says the third and final statement of what Rabbi Yochanan teaching that the modest ones and Rabbi Dosa are saying the same thing. And he goes to a fundamental. He takes it like back to stage one. Because what was our whole question here? Our whole question was our whole fundamental question was, how can Rabbi Yochanan say that you're not allowed to consecrate something that was stolen from you when it's not in your possession? It seems like he should hold of the modest ones and and the modest ones, because the modest ones are part of a Stam Mishnah, and Rabbi Yochanan says like a Stam Mishnah, and the Stam Mishnah says that you can redeem things that have been stolen from you, even when they're not in your possession. So Ravina says we have another way that you and how did we answer that question? We answered that question by pointing to our Mishnah and saying that there's another Stam Mishnah that Rabbi Yochanan holds like, and therefore he doesn't have to hold like the modest ones. But we could have answered our question and undermined the entire question by saying, actually, this Stam Mishnah of the modest ones is actually the opinion of a single point of view. And that's why Rabbi Yochanan doesn't agree with it. But we didn't say that, and we couldn't say that because Rabbi Yochanan told us that the discrete ones and Rabbi Dosa said the same thing. So let's take a look and see how Ravina says that inside. Amar Ravina, Ilab de Amar Rabbi Yochanan Snuin Rabbi Dosa Amr Davar Echad. If not for the fact that Rabbi Yochanan had said that the modest ones and Rabbi Dosa say the same thing, Havamina, I might have said Mantan Snuin. Who was the Tana who taught what the Tsanuin did? Rabbi Dosa. It's Rabbi Dosa himself. And that it's not that it's two different opinions, it's all one opinion. And Kiheka de lo takshi stam mishnah Rabbi Yochanan. And now that we wanted to ask, hey, this mishnah of the teaching of the modest ones is a stam mishnah, and that stam mishnah is going to be difficult for Rabbi Yochanan. For Rabbi Yochanan, we could have said that Rabbi Yochanan says, as we turn to Ayin Amud Aleph, Kistam Yechida Lo Amar, that yes, in general, he would say that we say that the halacha is like a Stam Mishnah. But where we know that a Stam Mishnah is the opinion of just one person, maybe he wouldn't say that. And so as a result, maybe we would be able to answer that this is that Rabbi, the modest ones, the Tsanuin, are just Rabbi Dosa. And as a result, it's not actually a problem for Rabbi Yochanan. But because Rabbi Yochanan actually says that Rabbi Dosa and the Tsanuin are actually two different opinions, but they are saying the same thing, so now we can't say that Rabbi Dosa is the author of that Mishnah. Rabbi Dosa is not the Tsanuin. And so therefore, we needed to go through the entire teaching. So what we've done by teaching Rabbi Abaye, Rava, and Ravina is we've highlighted that all the back and forth of today was absolutely necessary. Now, we are not quite finished with Rabbi Yochanan because we are going to teach another related lesson that is related to the concept of that, again, that Rabbi Yochanan began with today. That Rabbi Yochanan says that when you have, that if you have a thief that stole something and the owner has not yet given up hope for recovering it, neither the thief nor the owner has the ability to consecrate it. So what else can that teach us? Well, for that, you'll need to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. I wish you all a fabulous, fabulous day and look forward to continuing our learning.
In the second discussion, isn't it a question of that the Tsanuim are not agreeing with Rabbi Dosa? What you were saying, they didn't agree with Rabbi Meir. It's a little bit confusing there.
No, so you're right. The point is that if not for Rabbi Yochanan telling us that the Tsanuin and the Rabbi Dosa are saying the same thing, I would have said that the Tsanuin are like Rabbi Meir. But in the end, because Rabbi Yochanan said that the Tsanuin and Rabbi Dosa are saying the same thing, the Tsanuin disagree with Rabbi Meir. So you're right. That's the end. The end is that the Tsanuin disagree with Rabbi Meir. And the reason that we know that is because Rabbi Yochanan says that the Tsanuin and Rabbi Dosa say the same thing. But if we didn't have Rabbi Yochanan's statement, we might have thought that the Tsanuin were like Rabbi Meir, and therefore they could disagree with Rabbi Dosa.
So you're saying they disagree with their Meir, they're disagreeing with Rabbi Dosa?
In the end, they disagree with Rabbi Meir. In the end, they disagree with Rabbi Meir. And the reason that we know that they disagree with Rabbi Meir is because Rabbi Meir clearly disagrees, doesn't necessarily disagree with Rabbi Dosa, but Rabbi Meir clearly says that that the basis for redemption is because Hashem put it into your possession. But that wouldn't necessarily tell us anything about the way Rabbi Meir thinks in connection with Rabbi Dosa. And so Rabbi Meir has the ability to disagree with Rabbi Dosa. But the modest ones, and if the modest ones agreed with Rabbi Meir, then the modest ones could also disagree with Rabbi Dosa. But by telling us that the modest ones agree with Rabbi Dosa, then it's not based on Rabbi Meir. It's not simply based on Rabbi Meir. We don't know whether the modest ones disagree with Rabbi Meir or not. They could, but they don't have to.
But do they disagree with Rabbi Dosa according to Rabbi Meir?
So of course Rabbi Meir is a Tana. So he's he's before the whole conversation of the fact that Rabbi Yochanan, the Amora, tells us that the Tsunuin and Rabbi Dosa say the same thing. So Rabbi Meir has the ability. One, he has the ability to say anything, but he in the end he could agree with the modest ones. He could agree with Rabbi Dosa. He doesn't have to take any position. The point is what we were trying to highlight is the fact that the modest ones don't have to agree with Rabbi Dosa if we didn't learn Rabbi Yochanan's statement. That's what we're trying. Rava is highlighting that if we didn't have Rabbi Yochanan telling us that the modest ones and the Rabbi Dosa say the same thing, we could have come up with an explanation for how the modest ones, the Snuin, were disagreeing with Rabbi Dosa. It didn't have to be that they disagreed, but it could have been that they disagreed. It's just a hava amina. It's just a possibility that we would have thought of ahead of time. And so it's in the end, though, because we have the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, we end up saying that the Tsunuin and Rabbi Dosa definitely agree, and it actually doesn't tell us anything about Rabbi Meir. It doesn't tell us. It could be that Tsunuin agree with Rabbi Meir, or it could be that the Tsunuin don't agree with Rabbi Meir. It was only that if we say that Tsunuin agree with Rabbi Meir, it would give us the flexibility to say that the Tsunuin disagree with Rabbi Dosa. It wouldn't be a definitive proof that they disagree with Rabbi Dosa. It would just give them the flexibility to disagree with Rabbi Dosa. Because remember, Abaye was saying that the Tsunuin would agree with Rabbi Dosa based on a Kal V'chomer, meaning that if the rabbis are going to enact something to benefit for a thief, so then for sure they'll do something to benefit for the poor. So Rava was saying, Abaye, I don't agree with you. Abaye, I don't think that the modest ones have to necessarily agree with Rabbi Dosa, because maybe the basis of them having the enactment to benefit a thief is not based on trying to benefit the thief, but rather it's based on the concept that the Torah gives additional ability to redeem Kerem Revai to the owner, even when the object is not in his possession, because of Rebbe Meir. It doesn't have to mean, therefore, that the Tsunuin would disagree with Rebbe Dosa, but it could be that they would disagree with Rebbe Dosa. That's what Rava is highlighting. But then, because Rabbi Yochanan tells us that Tsunuin and the Rebbe Dosa are saying the same thing, so as a result, we don't have the ability to say that for sure that the Tsunuin and Rebbe Meir are one and the same. Again, the point is to give us the flexibility of saying that the Tsunuin maybe don't agree with Rebbe Dosa. That's what Rav is saying. And because of Rebbe Yochanan's statement, we don't have that ability to say that the Tsunuin disagree with Rebbe Dosa.
Uh-huh. All right.
All right. We can go over it again if you'd like. Happy to do that. Let me stop the recording and we can see. Hold on just a second.